You're listening to Barbell Logic,
the podcast where we talk about what it means to experience strength
and how you can use simple, hard, and effective strategies in training and nutrition to improve your life.
It starts with meeting you where you are right now and finding lasting solutions.
Welcome to the show. You're listening to the Barbell Logic podcast. I'm your host, Matt Reynolds. Welcome to another episode of the Coaching Success Series. Happy Friday, everyone. I don't sound very good. I think I've got some allergies going on. I've been sneezing this morning. I was telling my producer, I hope I get through it and not sneeze. So this will probably be a pretty quick one this morning. And really, it's a thing that I have noticed and really learned from my little brother, Chris. So there's some personal anecdotes, some personal stories in here. I want to talk today about swinging for the fences, because I've noticed that this is maybe a piece that is often missed because of how often scary it is to actually swing for the fences in what I'm talking about. And so I want to give a background of some stories. And it's important because where this relates back to the previous couple of podcasts that I've done is that we swing for the fences divorced of the outcome. Like, we do everything we can to, when we get the opportunity that is an opportunity that can change our life, we have to take the hard cuts and the hard swings and swing for the fences. And so I can look back over our time at Barbell Logic and in my career of business ownership of now 16, 17 years. And I really think one of the big reasons we've been successful is that when it came time to push all the chips to the middle of the table or to swing for the fences, we were able to do that. And I've talked about that on previous episodes where I think some people are just not wired entrepreneurially enough. They are too risk averse to do this. And so I want to start with a little story, a personal anecdote that's actually my brother's story. And I'll be careful to kind of protect some names here. But when my brother and his wife, so first off, you guys might not know this about my brother and his wife, but they're the only boyfriend and girlfriend that they've ever had. They started dating, quote unquote dating, in the 5th grade. They've been together for a long time. He's younger than me. They got married about the same time we did. So we've both been married, I think, close to 25 years at this point. They have 3 wonderful children. They live in Boston. Obviously, Chris is an integral part of our business at this point as well. Does a lot of tech work for us, for our dev team, and operates as kind of a part-time CTO for us. And so when they were in their early marriage years, they were both career people. Both he and his wife, they had good careers, and they weren't ready to have children yet. And so they felt, as they started to, I think, both have some success and maybe also to prepare themselves for future children, to go into the Big Brothers Big Sisters program and to get a little brother. They ended up getting paired with a kid named James. It was the typical sort of situation, with the exception that James was really raised by a single dad. So James's mom was in prison, and James's dad was, the kind of guy who needs help and had a kid that was in Big Brothers Big Sisters. So kudos to him. He was doing the best he could, but, very typical, very prototypical, low socioeconomic class, low education, all that stuff. But a sweet little kid. I think he was 4 or 5 years old when they first started working with James. And they just did the stuff that you do and had a very, I think, healthy and right relationship with this kid. And certainly they weren't trying to be his parents, and had a good relationship with the dad. All the kind of stereotypes you would think apply. I mean, the house was chaotic and it was loud and there were dogs and there was always TVs were blaring and people yell across at each other. And it certainly wasn't a great home life. And so they just took James out and just gave him, opportunities and experiences that he wouldn't get in life. I mean, simple things like taking him bowling. The kid had never gone bowling. And I remember different stories like that, just, taking him to parks and going for walks and throwing the football around with him and stuff that he didn't get to do with a single dad who worked, all day. And so James was, those of us who are in our 40s, we are the latchkey generation where our parents worked, and they called us that because, we wore the key, we had the house key around our neck on a chain and would come home from school and let ourselves in and be, left alone for 2, 3, 4 hours to get ourselves in trouble before mom and dad came home from work. And so James is doing this with a single father. And they developed a great relationship with him. They helped him in school. I think they got him a tutor, helped him bring his grades up. They talked about, core values and improving his education and actually achieving and caring about school. And, this is kind of the way out of this cyclical, poverty thing that the family had been in for so long, and felt like they had made a difference in his life. And so for 10 or 12 years, they worked with him. Even as they started to have their own children, they would still, invite him over to family dinners and still go out and do stuff together. And he was kind of like they have 3 kids now. And I don't know if they had all their kids by the time this relationship kind of came to an end, but they had a good relationship. They were doing the right thing and trying to give the kid experiences that he wouldn't have otherwise had. And so by this time, my brother had started the business that he eventually sold, which was an insurance software company. And he started to teach James when he was pretty young, probably 15 or so, how to code and help him get job skills on a computer, how to do spreadsheets, how to do basic code, all that kind of stuff. Gave him educational resources, all that stuff for free to James, obviously, to be able to do that. And when James was a senior in high school, got all the way to senior year, didn't drop out. My brother had set up a situation. I think it was maybe between his junior and senior year, if I remember correctly. Chris got him a MacBook, a company MacBook, and said, hey, go through these courses of coding, and we're going to work through this, and we're going to really help train you up basically as an intern in this business your senior year of high school. And the day you graduate from high school, you can step out of high school and we'll pay you $75,000 a year to work for us at 18 years old. And remember, this is 10 years ago or more. Obviously, as a kid gets older and can drive and is 16, it's not really quite the same relationship you have when they're 5 or they're 6 or they're 7. They would log their coding hours. And it's a lot of times the way you, rather than timesheet, or maybe a better way to say it's not coding hours as much as it is lines of code, because it's more about output than time. And when you're running a business, and Chris did the same thing that really I do, they certainly had a fair amount of employees that were here in Springfield, Missouri, but most of their dev team and computer programmers and whatnot were not. And so there's not really a way to, and I don't think you don't want to micromanage this way anyway, to try to track their time. So you basically know how much code should be able to be written in a specific amount of time. And you can look at the amount of code and the output and know that you've got a high efficiency developer or a low efficiency or whatever. And, a month goes by and James never really even logs into the kind of schooling training for the development team. And Chris reaches out and is like, oh yeah, it's just busy with school. And, it's in my senior year and I'm just trying to get all this stuff done and got a girlfriend and all this stuff. And Chris worked with him and, gave him every opportunity. And in the end, after a few months, and really, I think before the end of his first semester, senior year, James sent a message, something like, yeah, man, I just don't think I want to do this. And, okay. I can remember the email that Chris sent back to James. It was extremely well written. It was kind, but it was like, hey, I want to make sure you understand that you're being given an opportunity at 18 years old to swing for the fences. And you've decided to not even get into the batter's box. And there are times in life that life is going to throw us that involuntary hardship and things like, obviously, James was not born with a great hand of cards, but my brother and my sister-in-law were an incredible opportunity for him. And they poured, I'm sure many thousands of dollars into James, as well as many hundreds, if not thousands of hours into his life over that 10 or 12 years to try to help get him out of this cycle of poverty, to the point that he was guaranteed a job if he would complete the training for the dev team. And James just decided not interested. And okay. And so, Chris said, hey, we're going to need you to bring your computer back by Monday, this coming Monday. But I want to let you know, man, winners in life swing for the fences every big opportunity they get, every single time. And that doesn't mean we hit the home run every single time. As a matter of fact, I would argue that just like in baseball, you think the greatest hitters of all time, the Ted Williams, the Tony Gwynns, the guys that got on base the most, they didn't bat 400, right? Not for their career. You're talking about an incredible Hall of Fame career is 1 out of 3 times you get on base, but we're swinging for the fences. And when we swing for the fences in business, it's often the same thing, and it might even be a lower percentage. You really just have to hit one out of the park. You swing for the fences every time. You recognize that you're often going to strike out. You're often not going to hit the home run. Maybe you get the base hit. Maybe you get thrown out at first, whatever. But we swing for the fences when we get those opportunities, especially those life-changing opportunities. We swing for the fences. And James, and look, he's 18 years old. His frontal lobe's not fully developed, so he didn't understand. But like literally that choice alone reset the course of his life for the rest of his life, because he chose not to take the opportunity that was given to him to dramatically change his life. And what he really wanted to do, and I believe he actually explained it this way, was that, like, he kind of liked coming home after school and playing video games with his dad, who was more like his buddy than his dad. It was a shame. And I know it broke my brother's heart and his wife. It's a lesson learned in why we swing for the fences. And so the reason I was thinking about that is because this week, I'm recording this, it's like 4 a.m. and I'm exhausted, and it's okay. Everything's good. I'm going to tell a little bit of a church story, and this is not going to be about church or about God or religion or anything. I want to be clear. The business is going very well, and we have several opportunities right now where we're swinging for the fences. We've had these opportunities to be on these TV shows. We've recorded those. Those will come out in the next few weeks. Should be great for the company. And if they're not, we still did what we could to swing for the fences. We thought, look, this is going to put ours, Barbell Logic, in front of 50 million people. And so how do we say no to this? Or the Undoing Urgency book that I'm writing that Forbes is publishing. How do you say no to that? Those are opportunities of a lifetime. There has been a tremendous amount of work that goes on at this business behind the scenes that you never see. And I think that happens at every business, and that's okay. I'm not telling the story for people to feel, any sort of emotion towards the amount of work that myself or my team have put in here. But the reality is that we talk a lot about doing hard things and voluntary hardship and doing the work, and there's value in the work, and pulling weeds on the things that are not important and that are urgent and not important, and being very efficient and focused on the stuff that is urgent and important. And so that you can open up as much time as you can to work on the things that are the most important, but are almost never urgent. And so that's what we do. And so there are times, and I would call these the very high potential return on investment opportunities that we get. Those are the times where it is hyper urgent and hyper important. And these are the times, and these are the weeks, and sometimes even months, and it can't often last longer than that because you'll burn everybody out, where everyone puts in 80-hour weeks and 100-hour weeks, and sometimes 110-hour weeks. I have not had more than 6 hours of sleep in 3 weeks. And that's okay. My sleep that I'm getting for 5 hours a night is really good sleep for 5 hours. I've got deep sleep, but it's not long enough. And so actually, I'm recording this now. I'm going to take my wife down to the cabin. You've heard me say stuff like this before. This is it's a getaway for us, half hour away, 40 minutes away. And I'm going to do some work, but I'm mostly going to rest because I need it. And so this week, we planted a church. The oldest families in the church are the Reynolds, myself, and my pastor and his wife, and their older kids in our mid-40s, and everybody else is basically in their 20s. These are young families. They've got a bunch of kids. They're very pro-family, and there's babies everywhere and toddlers everywhere, and it's beautiful and wonderful and noisy and, chaotic and all that stuff. But I love it. I love this church. I love being part of it. And we've been meeting in my home for the past 22 months, and we have a nice home. We live in Springfield, Missouri, where you can buy a lot of home for a little bit of money. But, we've got 50, 55, 60 people in my living room on a Sunday morning, and we're bursting at the seams and we need a building. The goal was never to be a home church. And so we got an opportunity to make an offer on a building. For being mostly a young, poor church, we've been blessed in that we have very solid finances. We've got a full-time pastor. We're able to do that back in September of this past year. Paid him since day one. He was able to leave his other work and just be a full-time pastor. He's great. He's one of my best friends. I was on a trip. I just got back. One of the reasons I'm tired is I drove back from Iowa yesterday from a church council meeting to be part of a denomination that we're entering into. And so on the way down, so we found this building. We love this building. a couple weeks ago after church Sunday. So we get up Sunday, we set up our entire house for church, which takes some work, and set up the chairs and, make the big air pots of coffee and all the things, and have Sunday school church. We always do a fellowship meal together after church. And then immediately after that meal Sunday, we took the entire church to see the building, which is about 8 minutes up the road from my house, so not too far away. And the church loved the building, and it was in our price range. It had been built in 1947, and I won't call out the church, but 1947. And the church is like 20 people. They're all like in their 80s and 90s, and the church is dying. They would like to stay there and kind of lease back the building as they slowly die out. And we certainly don't want to pull the plug on them. And so we were open to that, buying the building back and then leasing it back out to them at, a different time, or earlier Sunday morning or Sunday night or Saturday night or something like that. And the finances for the church, while we were healthy, was a stretch for the church, but we all felt very confident that we needed this building. And I want to be clear, this is not like a multi-million-dollar building. We're so talking about like a $500,000 building is what was getting asked. And we couldn't, that was even a little bit out of our price range. So after everybody saw the church on Sunday afternoon, we all sat in the sanctuary of that church. And actually, because every member was there, and voted on, do we move forward with this offer? And we voted yes, like overwhelmingly yes. So we did. So we started to move forward with the offer. And then we find out, and then immediately from there, I get in a car in my truck with my pastor, and we start to drive to Iowa for this church council meeting. And we find out from our realtor that the church has received a strong offer from another church. Okay. And so, what does that mean? That probably means somebody's offered the full asking price for this church. And so what we did was we spent the next 48 hours or so, 32 hours, I don't know, somewhere in there, a day and a half, let's say, doing everything we could to swing for the fences. And we put a proposal together. We called a special members meeting after the council that night at 9 p.m. and did a Zoom call, and every single member showed up. We talked through the finances. We presented a budget. We knew it was in our price range, but this kind of at the top of our price range. I was on the phone all day as we drove to Iowa. I actually had my pastor drive my truck, and I was on the phone with banks trying to secure financing for a 22-month-old church, which you might imagine is quite difficult. And we were able to do that. And of course, the whole time, and you guys know the way I believe, and I don't try to shove any of that down anybody's throat, but I just believe like, oh, God's either going to open the doors for this or he's going to slam them shut. We ended up securing financing in like 6 hours for the church, like full approval. Felt like the proposal that we made, we were going to be outbid on from a financial perspective, and spent quite a bit of time writing what realtors call a love letter. And some of you might have done this before. It was very well worded to the church. We love this building. We love this community. Your parents built this church in 1947. You grew up here. Many of you were born here. Some of you were 5 years old or 10 years old when this church was built. We would love to carry on the tradition of this church and the beauty and the historical integrity of this church and protect it. The church has now kind of a 60s, 70s feel to it. And we wanted to take it back and make it look like early 1900s, beautiful brick and stone and things. And so we had architectural drawings drawn up of what it would look like in the future with the renovations we would make, because we knew that was the leverage that we had. And so I tell that story to say, like, it was the best we could do to swing for the fences, right? What we weren't going to do is go into some level of debt that the church could not afford, that could end up actually killing the church. And so I just wanted to be able to get in at bat. We wanted to get in at bat. I wanted to be able to get in the batter's box and see the pitch and swing as hard as we could for the fences. And so it was an extremely emotionally exhausting day, securing financing. I know many of you have listened to this. That's always frustrating and painful. And the city I live in is the national headquarters for a Protestant evangelical denomination that is not ours, that it does not align with us. But they tend to be the primary lenders for churches. And then you find out that there is tremendous discrimination against churches who are not of that denomination. And so that was frustrating. And, I continue to have frustrating conversations with banks, ended up going to the bank that we actually bank at for a traditional commercial loan, because I've had a good relationship, and we're Barba Logic banks, and we're the Reynolds Bank, and we're the church banks. and they could see all the history there and see our timely payments and all those sort of things. We were able to secure financing in a short period of time. So we got a proposal put together Tuesday morning this week with the love letter, with the architectural renderings, with, if you want to hear, not in a manipulative way, but just honestly, I think trying to play to their heartstrings a little bit. And if you want this church you grew up in to be full of young children again, singing psalms and hymns and hearing the beautiful voices of young children worshiping on a Sunday morning, then I can't imagine that there's another church for this. The churches that were making other offers would definitely not do that. They were not interested in preserving the historical integrity of this church, this building. And so to work very hard for several days while at the same time going to these council meetings for the denomination that we're becoming a part of, they were just incredibly long days, right? And lots of then meeting people, social events, going out to dinner, took a client out to dinner, wonderful family, had great conversation with them. And they received our offer. They said they absolutely loved the vision. They'd like to take a couple days to make the decision. But instead, within a couple hours, we heard back that we did not get the building. And we didn't get the building because while they said they loved the vision and direction that we would take the church, the other offer was just too strong. You can probably hear some of the frustration in my voice. This is a church that's had zero debt since 1971. It has 20 people who are in their 90s. They don't need all that money. And what they said was, we loved your vision and direction for the church, but we love the money more. So we're going to take it. Now, that's not what this podcast is about, because here's the deal. I'm still very proud that we got to get in the batter's box and swing for the fences. And so often I get on these podcasts and I get to tell about the big wins, but there are often times that are big losses. And those of you who do have similar worldviews, that's our way of saying, like, well, God did exactly what we asked him to do, which is he closed the door. Like, this isn't the right building and there's one for us. And so it's not a loss. It's still a win. But in the moment, it sort of feels like a loss because you swung for the fences and you struck out. But there's a refining process in the swinging for the fences. And we have no opportunity to get that if we don't take the at-bats. And so tying this back to this podcast and to coaching, if that's you, if you get the opportunity, I've talked about the famous interview with Bill Gates and Warren Buffett, where they both said that the big difference between people who are successful and people that are not, are that people who are successful have the ability to really lock in and focus and get an enormous amount of work done in a short period of time. That's what swinging for the fences is. That's what swinging for the fences is. That's what that means, right? It's when you get the opportunity that is the life-changing event, potentially, you go 100% on urgency and importance, and everything else gets pushed aside. I did almost no work for Barbell Logic for 2 days as I worked on this because it was the most important thing in my life at that time, to swing for the fences. I'm thankful that we did. I'm grateful that we did. Barbell Logic has another 20 stories just like that, times in our life, milestones, things that I'm sure will be in a future book about, the things that I look back and see could have made or break the business. And it all came down to, when given the opportunity, don't be like James. Swing for the fences. You're not always going to hit the home run, but there's refining power in that hardship. There's refining power in putting it on the line. There's refining power in, I want to be clear, do not take on debt that your family can't afford. You still want to make wise decisions, but don't not make the decision out of fear. We were able to put together the best offer we could for the church that was extremely wise and extremely logical, something that we could afford. And then we did the best we could to swing for the fences. We didn't hit the home run this week. And that's okay, because we're ready to do it again. And we're looking for another church building. And so, and we believe that will be provided at some point. We'll have an opportunity to purchase one soon, hopefully in this town and in an area that we would like to do that. In your business, it's the same. If your whole life looks the same every single day, and you never, over the last 2 or 3 years, you can look back over the last few years and say, I never really even got the opportunity to swing for the fences. I promise you that's a you problem. If you consistently do the work If you consistently focus on what's important, opportunities will come because they do. People who work hard, people who have great work ethic, people who are likable, people who are of high integrity, those opportunities will show up every once in a while. And when they do, it is all hands on deck, swinging for the fences, high urgency, high importance. It often doesn't take that long. Sometimes it only takes a few days of super hard work. Don't be fearful of striking out. Be excited about what the opportunity is to swing for the fences. So if you get the opportunity to close the big client as a coach, or to not have to be in the gym 60 hours a week and move your clients over to online coaching and make more money per hour and significantly less time, whatever that is, man, swing for the fences. You're going to look back over your life and you're going to think about every opportunity like that you had. And just like the podcast from, I believe, last week, the joy and the satisfaction in the refining process is going to be in that you earned the opportunity to swing for the fences and you took the best swings you could. It's not going to be in whether you actually hit the home run or not. Now, the more opportunities we get, the more home runs we hit. And so even in business, if venture capital, they invest in companies, they know 1 in 20 hit. 19 out of 20 will fail. But they're not looking for 20 out of 20 or 19 out of 20 or 10 out of 20, or they know they just need the one big home run, right? They just need Facebook. They just need Airbnb. They just need Uber. They just need NVIDIA. They just, whatever that is, they just need Apple. That pays for the investment of all the other 19 that failed. And they do that every year. That's their whole life. And so work your butt off so that those opportunities come up. And when you see that opportunity, hone in and focus and knock it out of the park. When you don't, you still learn something about yourself and are better prepared for the next at bat. Will yet again not try to lay down a bunt, but swing for the fences every single time. So there you go. There's another episode of the Coaching Success Series. Happy Friday to you. Hope you have a great weekend. I am hopeful, and even I would say, since I talked about church, prayerful that I get some good sleep and good rest. About 30% sleep debt on the week this week, last week, and the week before. So I'm 3 weeks in a row on 30% sleep debt, which is not good. So I'm going to try to get some good rest and some good food and some good relaxation time. Still going to work. I'm not going to sit around and be lazy and watch Netflix all day. That's the goal. So that I can come back in a couple days, be ready for the next opportunity, and swing for the fences myself and practice what I preach. So hope you guys have a great week. If you get value from this podcast, as always, we would love a 5-star review. It's such an honor to us to have those. I read those reviews. I'm grateful for those. Please share the podcast with a friend or family member, someone that you think might benefit from it. And I'll see you guys next Friday.